I am going to beat you into the living death.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man Ant Walker here with the latest edition of the Living Death Show. We are just a couple days late here, but hey, there was a holiday and we got real lives going on. So yeah. So here we are. We are here, better late than never. And of course, through the magic of Skype, we don't have the screens arranged the way we'd like. Screw you, Skype, for making this so difficult. But let's go ahead and introduce these two gentlemen who need no introduction, but we do it anyway because we love them so much. First up is the jack of all trades who has mastered them all. This time he is unencumbered by Texas weather. He is the senior editor of SureDoc.com and my homie, Ben Duffy. What's up, Ben?
I mean, I'm slightly encumbered because it's literally 100 fucking degrees out, but it only encumbers me if I step outside into it. Like, our connection should be fine unless shit literally like melts off telephone poles out there, which I'm not ruling it out, but I'm doing great.
All right, good to hear, man. And of course, the man who anchors the panel every week with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of SureDoc.com, also my good friend, Mr. Jay Petrie. Jay, how are you doing today, my man?
Come hell or high water, technical issues and whatnot, we are all back together again. And this means a lot. Like I've said this many times on the show, that there's all the work that we put into these events. I mean, Ant, you've done it for years, so even if you're a high-level fan now, you know the process and the grind and the exhaustion. And there's not always that catharsis. That the event happens and you go, okay, and then there's that still something left there. This is my, well, let's talk about everything that crazy is happening. Which is kind of a really good thing for me, because otherwise my head would explode, because, it's kind of like going to a really good movie by yourself.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I want to talk about it with somebody, but there's, oh, I just saw Heat the other day. I want to talk about that. Anyway, stat of the week. The stat of the week is 0, because in the UFC 276 main card, there were 0 takedowns in the whole main card, all the way through the 5-fight main card. Now, that hasn't happened since UFC 134 back in 2011, that we've had a pay-per-view with blanking takedowns, and that was a knockout heavy card in Brazil, you might recall. But yeah, not even you couldn't buy a takedown. Nobody could land anything. There were many tries, and all of them failed. So 0 is the stat of the week.
Well, 134, was that Silva and Okami?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Oh, memory. Ooh, still there. Beautiful. All right, gentlemen. Jay, excellent stat of the week. That was something that was highlighted on the broadcast, that it was like, oh wow, like I didn't even notice that no takedowns happened. Yeah, at some point, I forget which fight, that they did say that a takedown hadn't been done or something. That whole main card. So,
very nice. Shout out Zach Candino.
So one thing that's interesting here, I think I should have a little bit to say about this here. This is our first topic, because UFC 276, of course, double title fights, a lot of anticipation. International Fight Week. This is traditionally a big card. The International Fight Week that I got to work for live was spectacular. UFC 239. Like, there have been so many memorable moments at Fight Week. But was 276 a letdown, or do you think expectations were just too high, considering what this week usually means for fight fans?
What's the biggest memorable moment? Okay, that's kind of an important question. The biggest takeaway from the event didn't come from the big 2 fights. I think, for me at least, it didn't come from Adesanya starting to become that champion who's winning fights instead of destroying, which sometimes you get that way with your long title reigns, and the definitive end to the Holloway Volkanovski trilogy. Again, I learned something. In fact, I learned a lot, but it wasn't the biggest moment. I mean, I'd argue the biggest moment was that featured fight, which was Strickland Poatan, where Poatan Pereira knocked Sean Strickland's trash talk and block all the way off. And if that's the biggest takeaway, a contender fight for a big stacked show from top to bottom that we were giddy about. I wanted to talk about it the week before we were going to talk about it, because we had that other filler, the Saruki and Gamrot fight. And I said, man, I don't care about this one. I'm looking forward to the one ahead of it. And to have so few major takeaways. You know, there were retirements and there were notable things for sure. Just, I think I built it up a little too much in my head. I mean, on paper, it looked like it would stack up, but I don't know. Am I crazy? Was it actually a great, not good? It was good. It was a good card, but was it great? I don't think so.
No, it wasn't close to great. It's hard to have a great card with kind of a disappointing main event.
Yeah.
I agree with you that the Pereira versus Strickland fight was certainly the most eye-opening and significant moment, because we'd been told more or less explicitly that this was a title eliminator, and I'm sure we'll get to later how we feel about that. But so it had the stakes coming in. It was certainly an eye-opening conclusion. And I mean, going into this, I had Strickland big time all day long. I explained why, but if you had a better superpower than you have, and I know we're going to talk about your superpower later, but if you had a better superpower and you had told me in advance there are going to be no takedowns landed on the main card, I would have been, oh shit, never mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, eye-opening moments. And then the rest of it was just a card, you know. Big disappointment was that O'Malley versus Munhoz ended just as it was getting kind of interesting. And then from there, it was just another pay-per-view card. There was no super garbage on it, but just, you know, kind of prospects on the undercard kind of sorting themselves out. Main card had a depressing little like mini feature with Barberena and Lawler. It was just another card.
You know, this one was a bit different for me, fellas, because as we typically talk about at some point during every show, like I normally don't watch the fights live anymore. This one, I did get to watch most of it live. I had to go back and plug in some gaps in there because I had to stop to, you know, bathe the kids and get them to bed and whatnot. But for the most part, I watched this live. So it felt like I was truly the high level fan again. Like I was really into it and wasn't looking at it having known the results. I was just trying to enjoy it in the moment, and that added a lot of excitement to me. But even still, when you have two title fights that go the distance and both of them seem pretty clear cut from jump what's going on, you have a highly anticipated fight that's a big step up in competition for a very well-known prospect, ends with a foul. Like it's very difficult to look back and say that was a great card. But at the same time, this is live sports. This is a game of millimeters, a game of inches. Like, we can't guarantee just by putting names on paper that something is going to be spectacular, because you never know what's in the air. The fact that there could be a main card with no takedowns, and we're talking about whether or not this was a disappointment, says something. Like, it says there are so many different variables here. Like, you can't really quantify it. I just about smacked the shit out my mic. So fellas, I think this is a perfect segue in here to talking about the main event, because I think that's what most people felt very disappointed about. Israel Adesanya, in a very clear-cut decision, absolutely smokes Jared Cannonier. But was it the most aesthetically pleasing fight that you've seen? Probably not. I mean, what should we expect from him going forward? Is this a guy who the matchups are going to be what determines how exciting this man is?
I was afraid of it coming into this fight. I think I even actually talked about it on the preview that we did last week, about that I was expecting it would go to a somewhat lackluster decision where he wouldn't quite pull the trigger like we know he could, and you'd almost kind of be left wondering, why didn't you, and why couldn't you, and what gives? Like, there was more. It's like at the end of a 3-round fight, a fighter loses and drops down and does a bunch of push-ups or something. You're like, you had that energy, you could have used it. And so it had that kind of underwhelming, clear-cut win. I mean, like, I think I gave Cannonier a round, I believe, officially, and that was just because of I mean, that could have been the relative success of, even though he actually was outstruck by a little while, he looked marginally better than he did. So I could, you know, sometimes we fall into that trap, but it was just, it wasn't so much that he was concerned, Israel Adesanya was concerned about the power, but he fought smart. And I can't fault him for that because of the show win system and the championships on the line and all of that blah blah blah. Yeah, just win, baby, is such an important mentality for these fighters, because if he loses, like the UFC was blabbing all week about he's undefeated at middleweight, and Izzy kept being like, no, you don't have to say that. I lost a fight, it's okay. But if he lost at middleweight, then the mystique, the luster goes on. I don't think it's matchup based though, because we've seen him fight gritty wrestlers just like we've seen him fight, a powerful leg kicker with a monster right hand and a good switch stance, like Cannonier and Vettori. We saw both were underwhelming matches that you looked at Izzy and went, we know you can do more, so what's stopping you? But I guess if there's one big takeaway from that, it's that he can't do our jobs. And I guess that's okay. Yeah, sure, I can't be the middleweight champion, but there's no way in hell that you could write 2,000 words about that garbage fight.
And Ben, allow me to step on your toes here for just a second. Like, I'm thinking about Israel Adesanya doing what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to go out there and win. If he goes out there and loses, he doesn't get paid as much. His next fight, he certainly is not going to get paid as much. He loses the belt. He loses a lot of status. There are a lot of things that go out the window when he loses. Let's think back to the last dominant middleweight champion that we had in Anderson Silva. How did he lose his belt? Trying to make things exciting when he didn't necessarily have to. You're clearly outstriking Chris Weidman and you start clowning around and then you get clocked. And you know what everyone did when Anderson Silva got laid out? They laughed.
Oh yeah.
They laughed. And it was a meme and it was like, oh wow, you shouldn't have done that. If that happens to Adesanya, that's exactly what people are going to say. The same people that are complaining about the level of excitement are going to say, hey, you shouldn't have done that. I want to bring up I wish I should have pulled it up so I can quote it directly, but our good friend of the show, Casey Leiden of MMA Fighting, made a very good point on Twitter a few days back. He said the middleweight division has figured out how to not get knocked out by Israel Adesanya, but they haven't figured out how to beat him.
Okay, I can get on board with that.
Yeah, because it's if you're Jared Cannonier, if you are Yoel Romero, if you are Marvin Vettori, if you are Paulo Costa, you're one of these guys who your best shot on paper is to just knock his head clean off his shoulders. Well, you better try to knock his head clean off your shoulders. And you know what? Paulo Costa tried. You saw where he ended up. You see every time Adesanya fights a guy that strikes something personal with him, what happens? Look at Derek Brunson. There was some Aussie and Kiwi feud going on between him and Robert Whittaker, and you saw what ended up in their first fight. Like, if you piss this man off, you get laid out. Cannonier might be too nice of a guy. Marvin Vettori might be too stupid to take seriously. I don't know, but the fact of the matter is, as the challenger, you have to challenge the champion for the belt. The champion is not going to just provide the red carpet for you to get a victory. So middleweight division, figure it out. It's not his job to provide an easy path to the belt. You've got to take it.
I'm with you here. And of the dominant champions that we've ever had in the UFC, how many have ever been consistently entertaining at the same time? They've all been boring at times. George St. Pierre was derided for his fights being boring. Anderson Silva was like mystifying. Like, Dana White was just coming out of his skull over how bad some of those title defenses were. Who among dominant champions, like guys or women who defended their title 2, 3, 4, 5 or more times, how many have ever been exciting on a consistent basis? Like, none.
Yeah.
None. And it's the case across all sports. Like, and in the end, people will remember the dominance, not the weirdness. I mean, hell, the most famous combat sports athlete of all time, Muhammad Ali. If you ever watch his fights on a reel, his highlights are impressive, but he has just stretches of 5 or 6 incredibly boring fights in between, especially because kind of like Anderson Silva, kind of like Israel Adesanya, he was a defensive wizard first.
Yep.
Like it's not that weird. And I love Ant's point that the same people that are complaining that things aren't always exciting would be the first ones to make the memes if he made things exciting at his own expense. That's not his job. It is other people's job to figure out how to beat him. And thus far, nobody's really come close except for Romero in that fight that was just so inert that it was literally hard to score from round to round. And I don't think that's going to happen again.
No.
Yeah, I mean, the old expression doesn't just hold for stick and ball sports. Defense wins championships.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of the longest title reigns, what do they have in common? They're really hard to hit cleanly. Jones, you can think of a couple fights where a couple times Jones got hit clean, like the Gus fight, and a couple other ones where you were like, okay, he really landed on him. Machida landed like once, and what happened to him? He got choked all the way out. So you can think of the GSP is tough to hit, and Silva had that elusiveness. He also had the Cote fight, which I believe he was losing until the Cote blew his knee out, but then the Mayan Leites fights. So yeah, and Mighty Mouse, every one of these champions, I think fighters would come into fighting Amanda Nunes for the most part, not wanting to trade with her, because they would get hurt, and so they'd be cautious and go, I don't want to, like Megan Anderson. When Megan Anderson took that first clean shot, it was over. Fight was over, and that's no discredit to Megan Anderson. I would not want to get hit cleanly with it by Amanda Nunes, and I'm much larger, so it's a common thread, but I can't fault him for it, because you have to rise to the level. And even though if it's boring, like I said, it was not exciting, he won. That's it. That's what matters. If he loses, it all goes down the tubes. So he's going to fight like that until what? Till
someone forces him not to.
Now,
and I think Ben's on the same question that I'm going to ask. Ben.
No, I was probably on a different track. So please go ahead and.
I was going to ask, is Pereira the guy that can push him like that?
No. No, I don't even pick Pereira against Strickland again a month from now necessarily. But the only legitimate complaint I have regarding Adesanya is that his walk does not match his talk, because he's the guy that between every fight now and every embedded episode is, I don't care about championships. I'm out there to see what I can do and do beautiful things. I'm out there competing against myself. And then he goes out and fights exactly like every other champ who's like, I don't want to lose what I have.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. If words don't align with the actions, then and no fault in complaining about that.
And that Ben, the way you said it is pretty remarkable, because it applies for many ways. The walk doesn't match his talk. His walkout was the best walkout we're going to see this year. And then the fight.
That urn remained quite empty.
We're not going to remember the fight, but we'll remember the walkout.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, there was another champion that successfully defended their belt, and that was Alexander Volkanovski, who put the stamp on the trilogy with Max Holloway. I mean, just a virtuoso performance, beat Max Holloway every step of the way. I mean, now are we looking at a pound for pound number one fighter here? Is that what we look at Volkanovski as? Does he beat Usman, who is my pound for pound number one?
He does, in my book. Volkanovski, after this past weekend, moved to number one in the Sherdog pound for pound male rankings, the first new fighter there since Khabib retired. And I was one of the ones advocating for it. And it's a thing. It's a 1A, 1B thing. I always thought Volkanovski was very, very close behind Usman. I thought this performance was enough to nose just past him. And honestly, the great thing about this is that Usman has a couple of next fights coming down the pike that if he wins them in sufficiently impressive fashion, I'm fine pushing him right back. Like, if he's the guy that snaps Leon Edwards' 10 or 11 fight unbeaten streak and he does it impressively, I have no problem pushing him back to number one. This is a thing that if both of them have credible challengers coming up for the next couple of years, or Volkanovski moves up to 155 and that goes successfully for him, this could be a really exciting next couple of years if you're into the mythical pound for pound discussion.
I think based on, I mean, when I take into account pound for pound, if you have a head-to-head matchup between pound for pound fighters, I give that so much weight because of how few there are. Because there's only 10 to 15 depending on the list you look for, and most of them are cross divisional. Like you're going to have Stipe or Ngannou on the list, and you're going to have champions from the various divisions. So to be able to have Max Holloway, a pound for pound guy, like pound for pound number 10, I think he was on Sherdog, but in the top 10 range, to be able to have Volkanovski beat him 3 times. Like, yeah, I know the second fight I scored it for Holloway, but he still won the fight. So I can't hold it against Volkanovski because of my opinion on the fight when the result is what it is. To win 3 times against a pound for pound name, I think is bigger because Usman hasn't. I mean, part of it is because the other guys in the division, for the most part, that he's been beating aren't pound for pound caliber. Jorge Masvidal, not a pound for pound talent. Colby Covington, right on the door of like a 15 or so, but otherwise not really. Gilbert Burns, no, but he should have been because he was a 155 that moved up to 170, and you feel like that should have more relevance in moving the divisions. So I think Volkanovski has it for now. I'm with Duffy that Usman could, if Usman gets out there and starches Leon Edwards, like, Nate Diaz almost did, apparently, according to people on Twitter. Dude, if you lay out Leon Edwards, I don't care what that'd be crazy. And this 2020, 2023, maybe, I don't know, the fight, is this fight this year? Yeah, the fight's this year. 2022 version of Usman could do that. So if he did, man, that might jockey back up. So I think he is, but there's a caveat. I have no interest whatsoever, and we might talk about this shortly, I forget. I have absolutely no interest in seeing Volkanovski at 155. No, not now. Give it like 2 years, maybe we'll talk. But why? We have so many challengers he has not fought. Why? What are you going to make Arnold Allen do the Leon Edwards thing? Josh Emmett, what's he have to do? So he hasn't cleaned out the division like Israel has.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that one, Jay. Too many challengers at 155 and 145 to start talking about jumping divisions, in my opinion. I still say Kamaru Usman is number one pound for pound. I'm not mad at anyone that disagrees with that. I think Volkanovski has a wonderful case for that. I mean, we could be talking about a 1A, 1B argument. But what brings it over the top for me is how Usman won that belt. To defeat Tyron Woodley, who was finally kind of coming into his own as a respected, dominant champion, which I think his most recent performance before that was when he starched Darren Till.
Yeah.
And that was like the high point of his championship reign. And to see how Usman just deflated him, systematically deflated him and broke him down, that was something that Volkanovski could not do to Max Holloway as champion. Like, he could not do that. Now, he pulled that off this time, but this is after you've beaten the man twice already. So I think that has a lot to do with me keeping Usman number one. And then also I include, the finishes in the title reign, and it's not really his fault that he's gotten rematches necessarily. I think that's more promotional hijinks, but Usman's still my number one. Also, too, like the technical improvements that he's made, like Volkanovski still looks like the Volkanovski that we know. Like he's just better at it. But Usman, got with Trevor Whitman and looked like a totally different fighter in the striking game. And I think that means a lot as far as, my personal opinion of who's the best right now. But hey, we could have this argument again in 6 months and I could say something totally different. So right now, though, Usman's my number one. But as far as featherweight is concerned, are you guys with the UFC commentator flavor of the month style of declaring whoever's fighting right now the greatest featherweight of all time? Is Alexander Volkanovski the greatest featherweight the UFC has ever seen?
I understand why I understand why they say it, because whatever they've got that they're trying to sell you right now has to be the best thing ever. But even I, who, take a more measured approach to this, he's 4-0 against the other guys you're going to bring up. And most of those have not been that close. I mean, he thrashed Jose Aldo. And here, he had one sort of so-so win over Holloway, one very, very close one, and then this just complete domination. But I would say that the dust still has to settle a little bit. I have the feeling that in hindsight, we will be calling Volkanovski the greatest featherweight of all time, but why rush to it now?
That's the right word. There is that rush to call the fighter the best fighter that's ever fought. That I don't know why it shouldn't be a marketing tool. Because it's so debatable. It's not something you can point to, and it's not something you can quantify because it's so heavily opinion based. And of course, pound for pound is too, but UFC broadcast doesn't really talk about pound for pound consideration. Like, they have a list, but they don't. It's not really much of a thing. But I look at what Volkanovski's done, and he has an incredible 7-fight stretch. Mendes, Aldo, Holloway, Ortega, Korean Zombie, Holloway. That is like John Jones running the gauntlet of the light heavyweight former champions. That's like Shogun running through Pride in that stretch of godhood for Shogun. That run is the only run that qualifies him for anything, and that's 7 fights. Like, before that, it was Darren Elkins. And I love Darren F. Elkins. We love Darren Elkins. But, like, 18 people have beaten Darren Elkins. That's an exaggeration. I don't know the number. I don't have it in front of me. But it's not a... Darren, if you're reading this, don't take this the wrong way. It's not a feat to beat Darren Elkins. Nowadays, I mean, it's hard, and you've got to, like, hit him with a baseball bat to even hope to drop him. But 7 fights does not greatest of all time make for me, even if it is against the 1-1, 2-2, 2-3, 4-1 guys. It's just the best of the best in the division. Because you look at Jose Aldo, he fought like 20 fights in a row against top 10 fighters, and he won. There was the stretch in the WEC where Cub Swanson was ranked all the way to when he fought Conor McGregor and lost the first time. Every single fighter in that WEC and UFC title run were top 10, top 5 guys, and he beat them all until Conor. So no, I understand the head-to-head. It means a lot. It means a great deal, especially when we have the perfect MMA math to do it, because we have Holloway. We have Volkanovski, who beat Holloway 3 times, Holloway, who beat Aldo twice, Aldo, who's lost to both of them. That is a perfect rankings type of thing you could have absent any context. But then you look at all of the incredible things that Jose Aldo has done for the past forever. It can't be overstated. When WEC for that stretch of time was the featherweight, if it was the number one people in the world, aside from occasional fighters in Japan, 145 was the WEC. Mike Thomas Brown and even Manny Gamborian for a while, Uriah Faber. All of those guys were the top guys in the world, period. So Aldo ran that all the way to Conor, got his title back by ruining Frankie Edgar. Oh, I don't know, one of the top 3 greatest lightweights probably we've had, and then did all that he's done and kept going. So yeah, Aldo is still... Volkanovski may yet be the F GOAT, the future GOAT, but he's got a ways for me, and I think he could do it by talking and handling more guys in his division to get there.
Jay, there's no way I could say any of that better than you just did, so I'm not even going to try. Jose Aldo is still the featherweight GOAT in my opinion as well. All right, so now that brings us to the next question here about the guy who previously was considered the greatest featherweight of all time until the title changed hands, and that's Max Holloway. So where do you think he goes from here, fellas?
I want to hear what you think.
What I think, he's a guy who's taken enough damage in his career where I think he should be considering hanging it up before long.
He's
I
30.
think but man, he's fight years. He's like 55. Like, this is a guy who's been around the block, and we know like his options will be, okay, you're most likely not going to get that title shot again at featherweight unless Volkanovski were to drop his next fight. Then maybe, Holloway could sneak his way back into the title picture. But for the most part, that ship has sailed. Like, he's John Fitch. He's Joseph Benavidez out of the division from that belt. Now, 155 though, I didn't quite like what he looked like there. He takes too many shots to take shots from heavier people. Now, maybe if he took a year and some change away and he properly bulked up and he got himself acclimated to 155, all right, we might be talking. And we know that might extend the longevity of his career simply because he's not going through that grueling weight cut, at least the same level of grueling weight cut. So maybe there's something there, but at the same time, man, this is a guy who's newly married. He's got a wonderful son. He's got a gaming community that follows behind him, and he has other revenue streams outside of fighting. He's proven himself to be one of the toughest, one of the best to ever do it. I don't think there's anything left to prove. I say maybe take a couple more just to get it out your system, but I mean, a couple fun matchups perhaps, and hang it up. Max Holloway deserves to know his name when this is all over with. I'd like to see him preserve himself.
Yeah, there's not much. There's no clear way forward in the featherweight division. 155. If he wants to keep fighting, and he wants to keep fighting and be a contender or be a potential champion, it's got to be at 155. And I'm not ready to completely write that off. The guy did just essentially walk straight into a title shot. All we know is that he didn't have enough for Dustin Poirier. Now, the problems that he faced against Poirier, that he was a high volume, relatively low power guy, even at 145, is only going to be exacerbated at 155. Yeah. And the problem that even when he wins, he gets hit a ton is going to cost more at 155. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but certainly he slots right in as a top 10 guy immediately. And as Ant said, if he takes the time to, retool his body, maybe make some refinements just in his approach so that he's not just counting on killing top lightweights by 1,000 cuts like he does featherweights. I mean, I'm not giving up on a guy who's 30 and that skilled and that intelligent and that well coached. I'm not saying he will be a champ or even make it to a title shot, because 155 might be the hardest division in the sport to do that. But I'm not giving it all up for lost.
Max is in it's the worst place to be, I think, for any fighter in their division. I think that the Florian, the Benavidez, the Faber, that spot where you're the bridesmaid and you can't quite get back over the hump or whatever.
Faber was that guy in like 3 different divisions.
Yeah. I mean, Maya, there's another example of the guy that just can't quite get over that hump. But Cerrone did that for a while. It's tough to see. Because in the Fight Facts piece, I also pointed out that, yes, Max Holloway has landed by leaps and bounds. Like, we're talking, there's like 6 fighters in the whole history of the UFC that he hasn't landed double their strikes. Just numbers are just absolutely off the charts. But he has absorbed more significant strikes than any other fighter in UFC history as well, which is also shocking. Like Roy Nelson or Yana Jacek, when she was taking shots, when she was dealing them out and getting them back. No, Max by a pretty fair margin. I think he broke the 2,000 count, which is mind-boggling. And then you think, 145, what's left for him at 145? Honest and truly, a bunch of rematches, or they slot him against the Arnold Allen types, or the Josh Emmett types, and he probably beats most of them and ruins, and he's the contender killer, the Benavidez, oh my God, what do we do? He's the Liz Carmouche of men's featherweight right now, which means he's going to be the Bellator champion. I like it. I like it. I like it. But there's something I like more. I believe, since I'm poo-pooing the whole idea of Volkanovski to 155, I think that's stupid. It doesn't make sense right now. Why rush it? And the last person to do that at 145, 155 basically killed the divisions. Killed both of them. Conor killed both of them. And it took years to get them back on track. And what do we not? We don't have a lightweight champion right now. So and that champion who wants to fight Conor again, or for this whole mess to start again. So if we're going to go whole hog and go max to 155, Volk stays at 145. Because if Volkanovski goes up to 155 and does both, Max Holloway wants to leave the company, because then the champion is somebody he can never fight in two divisions. But there's a fight I want. Should he decide to go on to 155? Who is the ultimate striker's delight that I think a 5-round fight might make it to 5 rounds, that would be the most absolute mayhem, significant strike total that you could possibly imagine at 155? Top 10 matchup, of course, gentlemen. Max Holloway versus...
I'm waiting.
I've got some. Oh, okay.
Absolute carnage, mayhem, blood and guts and punches and feet.
See, that one makes me nervous because a hard hitter at 155, just that makes me nervous.
Poirier hits like a truck, and Max was only stunned a couple times.
Yeah, but how long is that going to last? Like that. Yeah, I mean, I'd watch it. Just for real, I'd watch it. It sounds like fantastic entertainment, but that one makes me a little uneasy.
That's the one. That's the chin cracker moment. You think?
Yeah, I was thinking more on the lines like Nate Diaz. Granted, he's not top 10, but that similar styles of volume striking. They'd slap at each other and they'd point and laugh and have a great time doing it. That sounds fun. Tony Ferguson might be a little wild.
Underrated fun if that one goes to the ground.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Same thing with Tony Ferguson that goes to the ground too. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Gaethje, like, I feel you, but
violence for violence sake is what I'm thinking, because because I know that Max, like, even on those biggest shots that he took from Volkanovski, he only absorbed a couple dozen flush, like clean shots. So that is the one weird thing about Holloway, is that he gets touched, but he doesn't really get blasted that often. Like Poirier, I think it was like in the first or second round, he got hit cleanly and never really got hit that hard again. Because I remember there was like a stunning moment. I think I even wrote about that that Holloway took a funny step, because he's like, "Ooh, boy, I took that one." I just see that's my Just Bleed fight of the year, but I don't know.
Well, here's something that you just reminded me of that kind of made me nervous about Holloway on Saturday night. Man, he looked pretty busted up when it was over, and that's not something that we see often from him.
That's a good point. That is a good point. Besides this, he was all messed up.
Yeah, he was busted up pretty bad. Like, and that's just, even when he's been beaten before, we haven't seen him after the fight. Like when the announcement is being made, his face closed up and swollen up that badly that I don't remember him looking that bad after the Poirier fight.
No, he looked like a Street Fighter Game Over screen.
Yeah, like that's a troubling sign, and it's something that I've seen more in boxing than MMA. Just like, think about like Miguel Cotto. After Cotto fought Margarito, when he had the hand wraps, like
Plaster Paris fight.
Yeah. After that fight, you notice every time Cotto got hit real flush, like his face started swelling up and getting damaged, and the decline started. That's what I think we're coming up against with Max. And I say, hey, you stick around at 145, have a fun fight with like Edson Barboza or something like that. Like there are fun things that can happen to just kind of get that out of our system. But going up to 155, fighting someone like Gaethje and Volkanovski, who's like half the size of Gaethje, is busting your face up like that. No, man, I'm not comfortable with it.
All right.
But Jay, you are a glutton for punishment, so you are a savage man.
I know Max well enough to know that that's the kind of fight he wants.
Yeah.
Because it's also a winnable fight. I mean, not that Gaethje is easily beaten, but The style is a frustrating style. I don't know. It's a bad place for Max Holloway to be in terms of I want to be the best in the world. But in terms of being a UFC fighter and getting paid several times for the next foreseeable years, he's still got plenty of life.
Yeah. Agreed. All right. Well, let's keep things pushing here. Alex Pereira absolutely annihilated Sean Strickland, who had perhaps the dumbest game plan known to man. He has propelled himself to what looks like a title shot up against his old kickboxing foe, Israel Adesanya. Do you think he should be jumping the line after that win?
Yes. This is the essence of cotton candy matchmaking. It would be completely laughable to match a 6-1 converted kickboxer against one of the 3 top pound for pound fighters in the world, except for their shared history in the kickboxing ring. And if there were ever a time to do this kind of shenanigans with a sitting UFC champ, it's now. Jay just pointed out that it's premature to talk about Alex Volkanovski moving up to 155. He's got work left to do in his division. The same cannot really be said for Adesanya. There was an outside chance, like if Cannonier had not beaten Derek Brunson in Texas back in February, there's a possibility that Adesanya would have had 3 rematches in a row as title defenses.
Oh, man.
And the middleweight division is kind of void at the top. They're older. A lot of them have already fought each other. There's a new wave of middleweight up-and-comers coming in. You have your Andre Muniz, you have your Gregory Rodriguez, you got your Armin Petrosian. These really interesting guys coming up, but they're all a year away from really being in contention. Right now is the time to make a stupid, silly matchup. Right? Like this is the time. Might as well do it because this has an expiration date. The UFC is frankly lucky that Alex Pereira ran through Sean Strickland the way he did, because you know what? Strickland's going to go back. He's going to win 2 more fights, and he might have a title shot, 12 months from now anyway. Where if Pereira lost, this thing is over and gone. Nobody is ever going to care to see that revenge match. So yeah, do it right now. It's silly. The casual fans will love it. You'll be able to sell it to them. The hardcores we're gonna check in anyway. And even the most hardcore of hardcore fans, the ones who think we're the real sharp ones, like I want to see just a little outside chance, because at the very least, Adesanya is going to go into this motivated. Mm-hmm. We've just talked about how, well, Ant said it, like, don't make the man angry. Like, don't put the chip on his shoulder, because otherwise he'll do just enough to beat you. There's no way that Adesanya is going to be happy chipping out a 49-46 over this man when the UFC is just running footage of Adesanya like laid out on canvas in every promo reel. Adesanya's going to have something to prove. That's a dangerous man. And yeah, make it now. And I say that as a guy who is normally against this kind of matchmaking. Now's the time.
UFC got so lucky here. I mean,
lucky.
I had Strickland buy anything he wants. Like coming to this fight, that I thought, okay, Pereira has the power. Strickland has everything else besides maybe the footwork, and even that's arguable because Strickland likes to pressure forward, which means that you're taking some of their footwork out of the equation if the fighter is having to constantly move backward and they can't set up their big kicks like they're accustomed to. So everything was pointing for Strickland all day. And then he came in with like tiptoes BJ Penn style and wanted to play fisticuffs with the guy. And it did not work in his favor at all. I mean, he landed a couple jabs and he was in uber defensive mode and then kind of just walked forward and was like, well, what's the worst that can happen? And then he's out, all the way out. Like this is knocked out, knocked back in kind of moment here. So the UFC did that thing I always talk about of snaking your way up a division and getting all the way to the top and then being like, oh, here we go. We got a contender here after a fight. Seriously, he fought whom? He fought Andreas Michailidis. He fought Bruno Bulldog Silva, who is a legit top 25 guy. And then number 5, Strickland. And now he's got a title shot. And because the division is so busted, what else are you going to do? who, I mean, I don't have the rankings in front of me, but who is he not fought? I think he's beaten 1 through 6 in the rankings, I believe, last I checked. I think you have to go down to like Jack Hermanson or maybe, I don't know if Darren Till's ranked because he beat Kelvin Gastelum once. But it's a real open division that the UFC just got. This is the rare strike where the iron's hot. We know exactly what you did, sir. But yes, you got away with this one, UFC. And this is a sellable fight. And I got to give props to them because they did the darn thing. Right, Ant?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, if you put someone up against a top ranked contender and they beat them, well, you kind of take their place. Like that's just how these things work. So, all right. I mean, did Pereira deserve the opportunity to fight Strickland? Probably not. But he beat him and beat him in emphatic fashion. So it's like, what else are we to do but treat him like he beat the top ranked contender? So let's oh, actually, I'm gonna let you play. He's playing with my phone right now, which is gonna keep him peaceful. But I'm gonna have to snatch it from him when we do quick hits, and that's when things get a little dicey. So let's go ahead and ask this one question that's coming up before quick hits. And Donald Cerrone retired after his submission loss to Jim Miller. Now that it's over with, presumably, I mean, of course, we know what MMA retirements tend to mean. How are you going to remember his career, gentlemen?
Can I pose a question to you guys to answer? Is he the greatest to never win a major championship?
That was literally what I was going to come first thing out of my mouth.
The
greatest fighter never to win a championship in a major org. Just
Carry
considering how long he fought, and not just the numbers fireworks that you get from fighting in the UFC 36 times or whatever it was, but and then 5 or 6 in WEC. Just not only did he fight for a long time at a high level in 2 different weight classes, like he fought a who's who, and yeah, he came up against the ceiling against the very best of the best of the eras in which he fought, but he also took down some really good fighters. One of the all-time great action fighters. I mean, you can name a few boring Cerrone fights, but not many. One of the few guys who tended to be equally exciting, win or lose. Yeah, just an all-time great and very possibly the greatest fighter never to win a title in a major org.
Is he in 1 year a HOFA inductee, or is he too infamous for that? Too popular?
He's too well known.
Yeah. It's
kind of like if he'd retired instead of coming back to the UFC in 2012, like Robbie Lawler would have been the first inductee. But he came back, kind of really got his props with the casual as well as like the old school fans, won a title, and then I'm like, well, yeah, of course he's fucking awesome, but he doesn't need the Hall. He'll be in the UFC Hall of Fame in a year. So will Donald Cerrone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the only time that I have lapsed into sharing the same unfortunate good taste as the UFC is that we both have Kazushi Sakuraba.
Preach. It's coming to that Miller fight, I had Cerrone winning the fight, knowing that Miller has suddenly developed power at his age, having conquered Lyme disease, and I thought that Cerrone could easily get cracked with something, and
he got bit by a radioactive tick. That's what happened.
Yeah, man. I mean, whatever has happened he's on a 3-fight win streak now. Jim Miller is. I don't think he's been on a 3-fight win streak in a long time. Again, don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's been a few minutes since he's been on a win streak like that. But Cerrone, like, he was the epitome of a must-see TV fighter. Like, if you're going to tune into a broadcast, you being the royal you, a casual fan, a hardcore fan, or a in-betweener, you're going to recognize him, you're going to appreciate him, and you're going to sit down and be like, oh, Cowboy's fighting. It's that kind of representation, that kind of brand that he built for himself that was perfect, because he never once was the indestructible warrior that he would destroy everything in his path. He lost fights. He lost plenty of fights. He ran up against the ceiling and got battered back down again. He lost some close ones. He won some close ones. but it was always appointment must-see. You got to sit down and watch him fight kind of television. And that is a very important role to have, because it's not a gatekeeper. It's not a journeyman. It's something more. It's something better. And it's something kind of respectable. There aren't many guys like that we can think of in the line of the Cerrones that we have. Not just the anytime, anywhere kind of fighters, but the, like you said, Duffy, never in a boring fight. Like, even the matchup, even if he gets clowned and loses a clear cut, whatever, or even if he gets blasted, or even if he gets in there and head kicks somebody, it's going to be interesting. And I think that's a good legacy to have. And the fact that he had 18 post-fight bonuses is also pretty good too, because that's a lot of money plus the rest of it. So he's in good territory. Yeah, I wonder if the UFC is going to rush to put him in the Hall of Fame like they did Khabib, because unless Cowboy starts an MMA promotion and wants to challenge the UFC like Khabib did for Eagle, I don't think they're going to have any rush to put him in. But of course, even by the fictional criteria of the UFC Hall of Fame, how could he not be? Everything is accomplished besides the gold. Yeah, and if you're Israel Adesanya, championships don't matter. I don't even know where the belt is right now.
Yeah, I think it's also important to keep in mind, like, the prominent placement he was usually given on cards. You look at his resume, look on the Fight Finder, look on Tapology, and look at the cards that this man competed on. And if you look even deeper, like where he was placed, like how many times did he headline into a pay-per-view? How many times did he open a pay-per-view? How many times was he featured in some sort of prominent place to make sure your butt was in the seat looking at that TV? Think back to him, and was that Alex Hernandez, the first ESPN card in Brooklyn? Like, there was a reason why Cerrone was selected for that. There was a reason why he was on 202, the Diaz McGregor rematch, or was that was the first? That was a rematch, right? Yeah, it was a rematch.
Yeah,
it was a rematch. Yeah, so there's a reason why he was on that card. Like, there's a reason why he was on 229. Or was he on 229? He was on. It was another. It was Gaethje Ferguson. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. So when he rematched Pettis, like, he's been on plenty of prominent cards for a reason, because this man always delivers from an action standpoint. So yeah, I find it very difficult to believe that this man is not going to be a UFC Hall of Famer before we meet this same time next year. I'd be very surprised.
But is this the last time he fights in MMA?
No.
Just MMA.
Oh, just MMA? Okay.
Just MMA.
Because you know what Dirty thought I'm thinking, right?
Yes.
See, I think Cerrone is the kind of guy that the UFC might want to just scoop up in some sort of role just to be around. Maybe they induct him in the Hall of Fame and make him some sort of ambassador,
brand
whatever.
Ambassador.
Yeah, just to keep the UFC logo above him, because he does carry that level of love and respect with the fans. Yeah, I don't see this guy fighting in Bellator. I don't see him competing in Ryzen, although I think there's money to be made in some of these places, but I just don't see it from him. I think he's a UFC lifer, and that's kind of going to be the end of it.
Ben, is this the end of the MMA career for Cerrone?
Obviously, I don't believe 90% of them, but there's a continuum. And I fall a little more to the side of I kind of sort of a little bit believe him. He's a guy that is finally appears to achieved a certain amount of financial stability, is finally a family man after kind of years of being a party guy and rumored legendary swordsman on the road with the UFC. He may be ready to kind of move into the next phase. He's got other things going on. So I only 82% doubt this instead of 99%.
It's funny you say that. I believe Cerrone is done with MMA more than I believe Khabib is done.
Man, I sure hope we're doing shows together long enough that you finally admit you were wrong about Khabib.
Me too. but it won't be.
Like it's gonna be, the Living Death
like 42.
show, episode 1065. 10 years from now, be like, okay, man, Khabib is 43. You ready to call this one yet?
He's coming back next week. He's coming back, and you're muted now, pal.
Khabib with a long gray beard and grandchildren, and Jay still begging for this guy to come out of retirement.
I'm still thinking he's coming back. I definitely, I would say in his 40s, I will still keep that torch alive. But he's what, 34? I don't know how old Khabib is, so you can correct me.
He was 32 when he retired, so 34 probably or close to it right now.
Yeah, he's still got plenty of time left.
It's okay. I only admitted about 18 months ago that Ricardo Arona isn't coming back.
Dude, he's just gotta finish riding the wave. He'll be back soon, man.
All right, fellas. So, in the interest of keeping my son from absolutely destroying what's left of the show, of course he's already at it. We're gonna move on to quick hits while I have him cooperating with giving me the phone. So I reduced our time per question to 10 seconds. We have 8 questions to go ahead and ask here. Jay, I'm going to start with you. Sean O'Malley said Pedro Munhoz wanted out of the fight. How wrong is he?
If you worded it differently, I would have held up the paper that said no, because, dude, of course he didn't want out. He cut up his eye. Sean O'Malley, shut up.
All right, Ben, how does the UFC handle Robbie Lawler going forward since he still wants to compete?
Grapplers. Nothing but grapplers. Just grapplers. Grapplers.
So cruel. So cruel.
It's better that than like throwing him at Jeff Neal, though.
Yeah, absolutely right. Okay.
Did they fight? No. I feel like they were going to. I feel like I remember writing that out. I don't know. Maybe it was Neil Magny, I'm thinking. Anyway, continue.
All right, Jay. So got another one for you. Is the sky the limit for Jalin Turner, or will he meet a hard ceiling soon?
There's going to come the time that he's not going to be able to finish the guy he's going up against. When we know he's got losses, he's not an undefeated fighter. I'm going to go with like a top 10, I think.
Okay.
That's my ceiling. I think so.
He's there now, so Jay thinks he hit his ceiling.
I think he did. You're not going to rip the arm off of or rip the neck off of Michael Chandler. So go ahead.
Okay, Ben, I got one for you too. Why does Ian Garry want to become the next Conor McGregor and not pave his own path?
I don't know. It's kind of interesting for an undefeated phenom to want to be like the highest level also around ever. I'm surprised he doesn't want to just be like the next.
All right. You guys have the question. Okay. All right, cool. Well, Duffy, I'll just keep. Duffy, you got the questions in front of you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Ask me one, please, sir.
Ant, has Macy Barber plugged the holes in her game, or is she primed to get upset again in an upcoming fight?
I think she's plugged a lot of holes in her game. Problem is, she's going to run into that Shevchenko train before long, and everybody's got holes against Shevchenko. All right,
respecting that clock.
Oh, you know it, man. Jay, I think is it your turn?
Yeah,
I'll ask you one.
Okay. Adonis, let Daddy get the clock. I'll give it right back to you. All right,
we're almost there, pal.
We're almost there, big man.
Jay, Jessica I lost, retired, and then said she was going to become a pro wrestler. What do you think her next path will be?
BKFC.
God, I hate you so bad.
Well, we know it's not going to be the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, he canceled that thing.
Yeah, such a pity.
Shout out to Adam Hunter. That was the best joke all night. Is that breaking news? Joe Rogan has canceled the Joe Rogan Experience or whatever. And right after the interview.
All right. Let's see. What questions do we have left? Ben, has Andre Munhoz announced himself as a top contender at middleweight yet? And who should he face next?
Honestly, I think he is at the head of that pack of up and coming 185ers that will be ready for Adesanya and another fight or two. Next.
All right.
Derek Brunson.
But how? Yeah. Ooh, Brunson. Ooh, that's a good one. All right. Ask the Ant one. I think it's his turn. Yep.
Oh, okay. I think this is the last question we have as well.
All right.
And will Jim Miller make it to UFC 300 in about 2 years?
Absolutely. And by then he would have gotten over some other debilitating disease, which is going to add a new wrinkle to his game. He'll be like an expert head kicker or something because he got over, I don't know, Ebola.
He will have sprouted like bat wings from his back and just evolved to his final form by then.
Jim Final Form Miller. I like it.
All right. So now let me go ahead and pass this phone back to my son so he can go ahead and watch YouTube Kids, and we can finish the last couple minutes here that we have left on the show. So let's move on to the greatest title segment in all of media history. I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons, where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not since we last met. Jay, you're up first. What's your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
So the first June UFC card, Rosenstrike versus Volkov. I know, whatever, the Rosenstrike card, whatever, the June, the very beginning June card. Felice Herrig fought Karolina Kowalkiewicz, got submitted, retired, and we're like, okay, what are you going to do next? She's done. She's moving on to her next life as a model or whatever she's going to do, but she's done with fighting. Nope, just kidding. It's July. She signed with BKFC because life is always going to find a way. I gotta say, BKFC is building a women's 125 division that is actually getting, dare I say, respectable. There are a lot of former UFC names in that roster. Now, granted, basically none of them are strikers and or boxers, but they are all names to be like, oh, okay, wait a second. I mean, Pearl Gonzalez, I didn't know she was a boxer. Rachel Ostovich, I don't believe she was a boxer whatsoever. And Felice Herrig, I couldn't tell you what she really excelled at when training under the Currens. But yeah, she is the newest signee of BKFC, Felice Herrig. And that obviously means she'll fight Paige Van Zandt in London. I think that's probably going to happen. And hey, man, cash that $8,000 check. Run while you can.
All right, Ben. What's your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, my I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment comes courtesy of an interview, I believe it was either this morning or yesterday, by former UFC middleweight champ Luke Rockhold, who was speaking ahead of his comeback fight against Paulo Costa at UFC Salt Lake City later this month. But he gave us the shocking revelation that, quote, Alex Pereira would get mauled by like 20 guys in the UFC. Like, okay, one, yes, that's extremely obvious. We all know that. Like, I'm on record as saying, I think Sean Strickland would beat him if they fought again a month from now. But it's just so funny to hear Luke Rockhold saying that, because Luke Rockhold might be the best fighter on the planet at 185 that I would favor Alex Pereira to beat. A defensively porous guy with a bad chin who hangs out on the feet too long. Like, I would pick Luke Rockhold to do what Sean Strickland did. Like, not try to take it to the ground, hang out on the feet, and get lamped inside of 2 minutes. So it's funny because he said it like it was a great revelation. And two, considering the source, he's the last guy who should have said it. I am not surprised that something dumb came out of Luke Rockhold's mouth.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful.
Yeah, that's good.
Speaking of dumb things coming out of people's mouths, my I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment comes courtesy of our middleweight champion, Israel Adesanya, who, after defeating Jared Cannonier in that 50-45 decision at UFC 276, he got on the mic to say that, like, very bizarrely, like, after all questions have been answered, and at least from what I recall, everything seemed to be, rather friendly and, just a typical post-fight press conference. He suddenly stopped things to say before he walked off the mic that that he could do what everyone in the room does, but they can't do what he does. And he retweeted this clip of the press conference last night, I think it was, with the caption, McDonald's, like, welcome to McDonald's. Would you like fries with that? So, I mean, so many different directions we can go with this. First and foremost, yes, like, no one here on this panel is going to become the middleweight champion of the UFC. We're well aware of this. I've accepted this quite some time ago. Plus, I'm too small to be the middleweight champion anyway, even if I technically weigh at middleweight now. Just, I'm a welterweight that missed weight by a few pounds right now. So I guess that's a catch weight. But anyway, like, you don't understand that there is the same way you spent years and years in the gym crafting what you can do to be able to punch and kick somebody at will and to hip escape and to pull guard and do whatever techniques are going to get you through a mixed martial arts contest. You didn't see when I was trained as a public speaker since I was a child, or, you know, when I was creative writing for fun as a child, up until journalism classes, up until writing for school papers, up until tech writing for whatever company I was working for, up until video editing, up until audio editing. Like, there are a plethora of skills that go into what we do as media, and maybe we is the wrong term since I'm very much on the outskirts now, but
we.
yeah, but I did do it before at some point in time, and believe me, Israel, you can't just do it. You can't. Okay. Oh. I'm sure if you tried, if you applied yourself and you put in the effort and the time and you built it up, yeah, you probably could get very good at it. The same way, if we were to strip ourselves of our normal lives and we just did nothing but train martial arts, we get really damn good at it.
Yeah.
We get really, really good at it and be able to compete at some level. So, you know, let's respect what everyone does for their profession. You can't do what we do. We can't do what you do. But if the shoes were on the other foot, yeah, maybe we could dip and dab a little bit, but that's not reality. Reality is you're up there on that mic after you get into a fight. And the reality is that we sit down, cover your fight, and analyze it, talk about it, and put it together in words that you couldn't put together at all. Like, that you can't. Like, you just don't have the capabilities of doing it. And that's fine. It's okay. And yes, I would like fries with that. So, yeah, that just respect people in their work, especially when their work is something that boosts you and brings attention, that brings money in your pocket. But anyway, the UFC is still raging along. Instead of us kind of absorbing what happened at 276, we're off to the next fight week as Rafael dos Anjos and Rafael Fiziev meet for a main event at the Apex Center. Fellas, is there any matchup on this card that's standing out to you?
I was going to say the David Anama fight, but now he's fighting Garrett Armfield, guy he fought before. It's this card, man. Usually I can go, okay, like we talk about this in the show. Okay, maybe if it's not the greatest one, you can kind of pick and choose and go, oh, okay, well, I like this fighter, I like that one. I mean, like, where do we go from there on this card? To me, this is the quintessential one fight card. Like, if the Battle of the Rafaels is canceled, there's no fight card. You can't run it. This is a legitimate question. What is the co-main event? Is it Armin Petrosyan versus Caio Borralho?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That is a prelim fight. And I like both of those guys. I have watched them for quite some time. Petrosyan is on Ben's, I would assume is on Ben's 185er pack that's coming up.
Yeah, I mentioned him, and Borralho is right there too.
Yeah, and that's not anything. That's not, I don't know. I don't understand. I truly don't understand this fight card. It's not like it lost a bunch of big fights beforehand that I know of. This was built this way.
The biggest one that it lost was Garbrandt and Hani Yahya. And,
yeah.
And that's a fight that's okay. But still nothing that screams like, oh, I have to watch this. Like, this is the perfect time. Like, we say this time and time again, before pay-per-view or after pay-per-view. Take a week off. Take a week off. Let the audience breathe, because this is providing very little. I mean, the matchup that jumps off to me, which doesn't really jump off all that much, I just know Carl Roberson and Kennedy and Chaco is going to be sloppy and violent. Yeah. Like, we know that. And that's kind of it. Other than that, I mean, Michael Johnson's on here. Something strange is going to happen, probably.
Who's going to win the first round?
Yeah. And Antonina Shevchenko is fighting, and that just gives me an opportunity to point out that her coach and her brother-in-law is is a pedophile groomer. And that's pretty much it. Like I don't really, other than a few sarcastic tweets, if I were to watch live, which I certainly will not be watching this card live, this card doesn't really provide much of anything.
If I could interject before Duffy weighs in to drop this. It's July, as of the taping of this show right now. It's Wednesday, July 6th. There are UFC cards every Saturday to the end of August. Every Saturday. And we've been going since June without a break. At what point does the UFC have diminishing returns versus putting out content? I feel like this is going to be that card that it's going to be, a PFL level crowd. I don't understand anything about this. Duffy, take it away.
Well, there are no diminishing returns. The returns for this card from ESPN to the UFC are exactly the same as if the main card was loaded with like title eliminators.
Yeah.
There are no diminishing returns unless people are like literally canceling their ESPN Plus subscriptions in protest, which I can't do. I will say one thing for this card. It is a brand muffin for the roster. It's a high fiber thing that is going to sweep a lot of the poop before it. I mean, I asked on the preview, asked my co-host Keith, like, without looking, of the first 10 fights in this card, so 20 fighters, how many are above 500 in the UFC? And it was 4.
I was going to guess 4. Dang.
It was 4. There are at least 4 fights on this card where the loser should be and probably will be cut. The loser of the Nzechukwu-Roberson fight will probably be cut. They're both on multiple fight losing streaks and have Courtney Casey, if she loses, is gone. Nina Nunes, if her last name weren't Nunes, might already be gone. If she loses to Calvillo, she's probably gone. Chase Sherman, good grief. Who does he have nudes of? And can I get copies? He will be 3-10 in the UFC if he loses.
Oh my gosh.
Like, he'll be to the point where, like, Elvis Sinisik will be like, yo, dude, cut this man. Like, and I like Elvis Sinisik. Like, this card, just seriously, brand muffin for the roster. It's going to push some people off that should have been gone a long time ago. Aside from that, top 3 fights are pretty cool.
I just figured it out. This is a primer for Contender Series because it's going to result in a roster clearing for when they inevitably sign a bunch of fighters at the end of the month. That's exactly what this is, and I'm glad you pointed that out because that's just an excellent point. This is a pink slip derby fight. This is UFC on ESPN 39. Is it an ESPN card? I don't even know. UFC on whatever. Pink slip derby.
Yeah. All right, fellas. Well, I mean, I think that'll do it for this edition of the Living Death Show. Big thanks to Jay. Big thanks to Ben for holding it down every week. I guess you guys are going to do some coverage for this upcoming fight card just by obligation. I will have nothing to do with it. So, you know what you got to do. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful, stay positive, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.